peer-reviewed journals, this means that they only publish articles, researches, or scientific findings that pass a certain standard of quality. And these are usually for a specific audience, such as their co-scientists, the person within their own circle. So, let's take a short look at the process of the peer-reviewed journals. Tignan po natin yung diagram. After studying something and writing about the results, which for sure took the scientists about months, years to finish these two steps, it goes then to the journal editor. Meron din po silang journal editor. And the journal editor then sends out the articles for peer review. Or at his level, he may himself review the articles and then send back to the materials to the scientists for further revision and later for resubmission. However, at the level of the journal editor, ito po medyo masaklap dito. If he or she is not satisfied with the results or if the article does not sufficiently maintain the high scientific standards, the research may be rejected at this point. So after how many years of studying, of doing these things, pwede lang i-reject ng journal editor sa level niya. If sa tingin ng journal editor, hindi siya quality assured. Ang saklap, yung pinaghirapan, magiging magiging ilalagay lang as reference for future reference. So looking at the positive side, assuming that the research results pass the peer review process, let's go back to the previous slide. So assuming na na-publish po yung result, the peer review process, let's assuming that the peer review process is successful, the results indeed published in journals, let's be reminded po that journals are archived and can be read by other people in the future, or this can be circulated within the circle of scientists. So ibig ko lang po sabihin, what I want to emphasize on this po is that we know that the circulation of journals are very limited and the number of copies are controlled. And usually po, the recipients of these journals also are those people working in the same science field too. So what I want to say this po is public access to these research findings, though how helpful it would be to the public, is out of bounds, is restricted. So yan po yung medyo downfall ng mga research published in journals. So let's review this second. Sometimes scientists po present their research findings or communicate the research results through conferences. And we know when we say conferences, it would range from several dozens attendees or tens of thousands of attendees. Well, conferences are perfect venues for scientists not only to share their latest results findings, but also to network with other scientists for the purpose of collaboration or teamwork. Very advantageous on part of the scientists. And conferences are also venues for scientists to share about their enigmas or problems. Since they are within their circle, nagsisharean din po sila ng problems and enigmas, and also to get advice from each or from other scientists. In here po, we see the advantages or we see the advantage of presenting results during conferences because it brings together scientists of all ages, allowing the younger scientists to connect with the older ones. But there's a big but again. The research results are only confined within them. Again po, the public access to these research findings, though how useful it could be to the public, is constrained. Out of bounds, it's not accessible to all. So yun po yung gusto nating i-emphasize doon. So let's go to the third. Sa ang mga scientists po kasi here and there din po ang invitation nila to present the researchers, especially to universities, to colleges, and for them, this is a great opportunity. We know that university departments usually have many weekly seminars, and at this time, tinatawag na nating webinars, in which scientists from other universities or research institutions and companies are invited to speak. And such opportunities provide the scientists or researchers an opportunity to discuss or share the benefits of their studies to a more well-informed audience outside their circle. So at this level, medyo lumalawak na po yung reach ng isang scientist, medyo lumalawak na yung audience niya. Outside his or her circle na yung kanyang audience. So medyo may advantage na po siya. The results can be known by the fewer audiences kasi within the university lang siya. And then the last one, ito po yung pinaka-most advantageous. Scientists not only want to inform their colleagues about their latest results, but also they also want to communicate new data to the public. And as much as possible, they really want to have an access to popular media outlets which are read by more people than peer-reviewed journals and provide a wider audience. Hindi ko naman po sinisiraan yung peer-reviewed journals. Gusto ko lang i-discuss yung ano yung advantage ng peer-reviewed journals, ano yung disadvantage niya, and ano yung most popular na dapat gamitin ng scientist para i-promote ang kanyang research findings. And you know, just like any other researchers po, marami po tayong mga participants na researchers, scientists also want their works to be published in magazines, national newspapers, or they also want to be interviewed in the television and radio stations. Gustong-gusto din po ng mga scientists ng exposure. And because these communication channels, I should say, provide them much exposure than those with the peer-reviewed journals. Ang nakakatuwa po dito sa level na ito, ang mga scientists now publish their works or research results on blog sites. Sabi nga po ni ni Sir Sancho kanina, meron na tayong social media. Yes po, nag-expand din yung connections ng ating mga scientists. Gumagamit na rin sila ng blog sites and other online platforms just to promote their scientific findings. Again, this shows that scientists are also trying to find ways and means so that their research will be accessible to the public. So gumagawa din po sila ng paraan so that their research findings will be perceivable and accessible to the public. So let's look at the next slide po. According to Andrew Zerzan, the Director of Education at the British Council, he said that if people are better informed about scientific progress, they can not only make better decisions personally, but also influence decisions that affect their towns and nations. So I prepared a very short video here po. Hindi ko pala pinrepare. Dinownload ko ito sa internet to back up the statement of Dr. Andrew. So let's watch this po. Very short. So Thank you for watching. It is really important for scientists to tell the public about their discoveries, and they too are aware on this. But what really hinders them to do so? So let's focus our attention on the last slide of the video. Sabi po dito, if only someone would support, encourage, and train me. Scientists po ang nagsasalita dito. But without the why, this all becomes rather academic. So according to a recent report funded by the UK government and the science industry, which backed up by the video, two of the biggest capability gaps among scientists are communication and translation skills. Nabanggit na po ito kanina ni Director Maborang, yung how to communicate the results and how to translate in layman's term. Of course, nag-agree po tayo dito na two of the biggest capability gaps among scientists are communication and translation skills. Maybe in your mind at the moment, you have your respective answers, tama ba ito or mali. But let's look at these facts. Again po, these are according to Andrew Zerzan, the Director of Education at the British Council. Zerzan said that if scientists want the public to know about current research, and if the public in general want to apply that knowledge to their lives, scientists need clear communication skills. Second, he said that scientists must make sure research findings don't stay within the scientific community. Ito po yung sinasabi natin na if we have discoveries, if we have research findings, huwag po natin ipangalandakan lang within our circle. Ilabas po natin yan. Paano naman po malalaman ng public kung hindi natin pinapublish, hindi natin binobroadcast, hindi tayo nagpapa-interview? Let's make our research open to all. So as we said earlier, they should find ways and means to let their works be published, not perish. Sayang naman po all those years of working with the research output, sayang naman po kung ito ay mananatili lang sa isang file. And the third one po, according to Zerzan again, knowledge gained from research findings cannot benefit others unless it is effectively and broadly shared. Meaning po, the research results must be written in a language or non-technical terms where the public will easily understand the basic concept being described. Kung tayo po ay nagpe-present na ng results findings natin, huwag po natin gamitin yung mga highly technical terms. Gamitin natin yung mga non-scientific terms that the public would easily understand. So I know po there are some science experts here and researchers from the academe. The succeeding slides may somewhat help you in communicating your respective research findings to different potential audiences. So let's take a look on hows of communicating scientific findings. So based on my personal experience po as government communicators, a key ingredient to successful communication is to always understand your audience. By the way po, there is no such thing as the general public. Wala po tayong audience na general public, but rather a bunch of different potential audiences with different needs and different levels of expertise. So we do not have general public as target audience. As scientists or as researcher, we must recognize the exact audience we are trying to reach. Of course po, we should know what they need to know. And just as important, we should also need to know what they don't need to know. Ang public po, meron lang silang gustong malaman. Huwag po natin sabihin lahat-lahat. Kasi po, hindi naman mahalaga, baka hindi naman mahalaga yung lahat ng information na ibibigay natin sa kanila. Sometimes there are scientists or researchers who are delivering the same message to, let's say, the group of politicians or in conferences that they give at a science forum. Dapat po iba-iba din po yung quality of presentation natin. If our audiences are politicians, doon po natin gagamitin yung mga highly technical terms dahil naiintindihan naman po nila. But kung ang audience natin ay mga youth, dapat po iakma din natin yung ating presentation sa level ng kanilang understanding or hindi ko naman po sinasabi na hindi nila maintindihan, but highly technical terms are not applicable to them. Sabi nga po ni Anthony Lazarowitz, an excellent climate communication sa Yale University, not knowing your audience is like throwing darts at a dartboard with the lights off. So dapat po alam na alam po natin kung sino yung audience natin kapag tayo ay nagpe-present ng mga research findings. So second, I'm sure po maraming nakaka-relate dito sa table. Effective scientific writing and communication means transmitting our message clearly and concisely so that it is understood. It's about engaging our audience. It's about the so what and what does it matter to me kapag ako po ang nakikinig sa inyo. So what and what does it matter to me of your message. In short po, be simple and straightforward. No need to use flowery words or unnecessary expressions or jargons. So, may mga terms po kasi ang na alam ng scientists, iba yung pagkakaintindi ng public. Let's say po dito sa table, theory. Kapag ako ay nakabasa ng theory, let's say hindi po ako educated, ang alam ko sa theory ay haka-haka lang, speculation. Yan po yung public feeding. Pero kung gagamitin ng scientist itong better choice na kapag dinescribe niya ang theory, gagamitin niya scientific understanding. Ibig sabihin, there's science in there. Hindi po haka-haka lang. And the other terms po like error, scheme, manipulation. Ito po, aerosol. Ako mismo, pag naiisip ko yung aerosol, ang una ko naiisip is spray can. Kasi yun po ang common understanding ng knowledge. Pero for science world or in science term, ang aerosol is a tiny atmospheric particle. So, ang hirap talagang i-explain ang science term sa common public, sa simpleng tao. Kaya po, kailangan natin ng partner. Malalaman po natin sa third one. So, we know that scientists are trained to describe their work in neutral, objective terms, qualifying or all observations and openly acknowledging experimentations. Those qualities po play very well in scientific papers and talks, but are terrible for effective communication to the general public. Hindi ko na po dahil nabanggit na natin kanina. So let's take a look at this third house of communicating finding research. Kung hindi na po kaya sa level ng scientist, hindi po masamang humingi ng tulong. If that would be the case, then it's time for the scientist to partner with a human translator. At itong human translator, quote and quote, meaning they are someone working in an informal science or an institution or with a science journalist. Meron po tayong tinatawag na science journalist and ito po ay isang career. Ito po ay ino-offer na isang course. Meron pong ganito sa UP, meron din po sa ibang mga schools. Hindi ko lang po alam kung anong mga schools, but meron na pong science journalism na course sa Philippines. And sikat po ito sa ibang bansa. They are journalists who are trained in science and they are also scientists who are trained in journalism. I don't want to dwell po on much on this dahil po yung mga iba nating resource speakers, they are more expert on this topic. So, I just want to emphasize here po that scientists can tap the expertise of others, especially skilled science journalists, to promote or expose their scientific developments or breakthroughs. This is because science journalists can able to translate that discovery into universally understandable words. So yun po ang kahalagahan ng partnership with science journalism. So ito po, binanggit din ni Sir Sancho kanina na sa Philippines, medyo hindi pa po sikat yung career na science journalism. It is really important for scientists to tell the public about the discoveries and they too are aware on this. Pero sorry po. Nasa slide na. According po to Professor Clarissa David of the UP College of Mass Communication Graduate School, sabi po niya, we need science journalism and communicators not really to help the public understand the scientists. Take note po, hindi po yung scientists ang pinapasikat natin, but to help the scientists reach out to and speak with the public. So, minsan po kasi, ang unang-unang pinapasikat ay yung scientist or yung inventor or yung researcher. Hindi po ganun. Dapat yung mismo nating pinopromote, ano nga ba ang mapapala ng publiko dito sa discovery na ito. And sabi nga po ni Professor Clarissa David, we need science journalists to tell this. Hindi po yung papasikatin natin yung scientists and researchers. So let's look at this picture po. Imagine that the guy in the light brown sweatshirt represents science, while the other guy in the light green sweatshirt represents journalism. And right now, their directions po are opposite to each other. And imagine what would happen when the two different fields meet. Ano po kaya? May advantage po kaya? Or baka chaos lang, baka problem lang? Well, it would be very difficult to imagine, but yes, they can indeed work well together. So, tignan po natin, ano po ba ang advantage niya. So, when good science meets good writing, ito na po, nagtandem na po ang science and journalism. The emphasis of the articles is not really about the scientists and their work. It is rather on the substance of their works and its impact on the community. Ito po yung sinasabi natin kanina. And working together, both the scientists and the journalists communicate accurate science stories, hindi po siya gawa-gawa, and they will be able to mainstream science and technology into public consciousness. So makikita po natin sa mga newspaper ngayon may science section, and maganda po yun dahil minsan may mga breakthroughs doon na pinapublish, pero bibihira po. Kasi po sabi nga po ni Sir kanina, hindi talaga mabenta yung ibang stories kung science ang pinag-uusapan. Kaya kailangan natin ng collaboration with the media industry, collaboration with all the journalists, with all the writers, na i-cover din po lagi ang science so that it will become mainstream. Hindi po siya special field lang, kundi mainstream topic po siya. So yun po ang big challenge sa ating mga taga-media sector. And because of the partnership or constant training on communication, ang mga scientists na ngayon po ay they can now talk science to non-scientists because of daily exposure with the communicators, because of the partnership with the science journalists. Marunong na po rin ngayon ang mga scientists na magsalita using non-science term. Nakikita po natin yung development. And by using terms or vocabularies with the same meaning for scientists and the public. On the other hand po, ang mga journalists naman, they also learn how to put the science into evidence-based articles with the end view of informing the public on the amount of research and invention that would help them make better decisions. So it's a mutual benefit po ang mangyayari kung magbe-merge itong dalawang fields, science and journalism. Ang mga science journalists ay mayroon silang mga ready to be interviewed experts, kasi kung meron po tayong pool of science experts, hindi na po tayo maghahanap ng mga interviewin. And so with the scientists, kung meron na po tayong mga pool of journalists na kakilala natin at magaling pong interpret yung data natin, hindi na po tayong mahihirapan. So nakita po natin yung kagandahan kapag nag-merge itong dalawang opposite fields of interest. Ang ganda-ganda po kung ganito sana lagi. Kung makikita natin sa headline ng National Daily, Science ang headline, ang ganda-ganda po sana. But hindi pa po kasi nangyayari. Usually, ang mga nasa headlines natin ay yung mga politics, mga hindi po related sa science. So sana magkaroon din tayo ng mga ganong exposure. Let's hope for that. So next po, when good science meets good writing, marami pa pong mga advantages yan. Ay, nasabi natin kanina. Okay, so here's now the challenge po, yung sabi natin kanina. Hearing all these narratives, hearing all the real life situations ng scientists, na kinakaharap ng mga scientists. Ang challenge natin ngayon, since we are all professionals, we are all expert in our respective fields, let's make science then be available, attractive, not attractive na kailangan lagyan muna ng kulay, or na attractive in the sense na it arrests the attention of the public using the layman's term, yung madali nilang maintindihan. Kung pwede nga po, storytelling ang platform natin, but again, hindi natin dinadivert o iniiba yung content, and understandable for the public. And since we are all interconnected to these both fields, science and journalism, let them make it as our shared responsibility to promote science in our day-to-day lives. Magsimula tayo sa bahay natin, then to sa mga opisina natin, then to our circle of friends. Pero paano ba natin gagawin yun? Balikan po natin yung mga The House of Communicating Science. And next big challenge po is, let's always bring journalists together, or let's always bring scientists and journalists together to deliver the message to the ordinary man that science is something that is daily beneficial. Kung meron po tayong mga science expo, meron tayong mga science conferences, why not invite journalists? Huwag po natin i-confine sa within scientists lang. Hindi rin naman po masama na malaman ng mga journalists yung mga pinagdadaanan, yung mga breakthroughs, yung mga milestones ng mga scientists, ng mga inventors, ng mga researchers. Dahil at that point po, mas maintindihan nila. Kaysa yung i-present natin sa kanila ora-orada yung findings, hindi po nila yan mag-grasp agad. Unlike kung isama natin sila sa process, isama natin sila, maybe meron silang mga exposure, meron silang mga field trips, kung tinatawag, field trips ba sa mga laboratories, maganda po. At least at the very stage ng research, alam na ng mga scientists kung ano yung mga processes, ano yung mga initial findings. Pero of course, there's disclosure muna. Sasabihin naman natin sa mga journalists na wag munang ilalabas because hindi pa naman yan final results. So, nakakaintindi naman po ang mga journalists and other writers. So, these final slides po, let's focus our attention. Alam natin na science is not finished until it is communicated. Alam po natin yan. So, again, it is all our shared responsibility to build support for science, to promote understanding of its wider relevance to society, to encourage more informed decision makers, of course po at all levels, from government to communities to individuals. And lastly po, given our respective fields of expertise, given our respective professions, we can all make science accessible to the public that traditionally have been excluded from the process of science. Let's not exclude the public in science po. And with that po, that ends my presentation. We all hope po that we can all make science more diverse and inclusive. Thank you and keep safe everyone. Thank you DOST for inviting PIA. Salamat po.
Thank you, Ma'am Mercado, sa napakaganda niyo pong presentation. Nakaka-excite po talaga magbasa ng mga scientific articles that even a simple layman can understand and appreciate it. Nakaka-excite po yung challenge nyo. Marami po kami natutunan where we can actually present a better scientific data na may excite po talaga yung mga readers natin. Again, sa ating mga attendees today, please drop your questions or comment. Marami pong na-discuss si Ma'am Angeli kanina. Kung may mga questions po kayo, just drop it on the chat box. Okay. To discuss to us the next topic on science journalism challenges, opportunities, and trends, allow me to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Norly B. Villar, Chief Science Research Specialist. Sir Norly is an experienced science communicator and technology transfer specialist who started his career with the Department of Science and Technology in 2013, handling technology marketing and commercialization. In 2018, he joined the British Council Philippines, where he handled the delivery of the Newton Fund program and took key responsibilities in shaping the science program of British Council in East Asia. He is currently the Chief of the Communication Resources and Production Division of the Science and Technology Information Institute, which is the communication arm of DOST. He is also the executive editor of the SNT Post, the official quarterly magazine of DOST. He is passionate in local economic development through science and technology and innovation, and he fervently believes that science communication, along with technology transfers, are key to realizing science for the people. He graduated with a degree in physics cum laude from the Philippine Normal University, Manila, and earned his master's degree in environmental science and ecosystem management from De La Salle University, both, of course, as DOST scholar. He also received professional training on technology transfer and commercialization from the University of Texas at Austin, Center for Intellectual Property, University of Strasbourg, and the Intellectual Property Office of Georgia. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. Norly B. Villar. A round of applause, please.
Hello, magandang umaga po. Magandang araw po sa ating lahat. I am Norly Villar from the Science and Technology Information Institute, and I will be presenting the challenges and trends on science journalism currently. So let me just share my presentation. Here, nakikita niyo po ba yung presentation ko? All right, so my topic for today is current challenges, opportunities, and trends in science journalism. But I would like to pose this question early on. Is it now the unlikely golden age for science journalism? And just to start, magbibigay lang ako ng quick background on STII and our work. So we are the information and marketing arm of the DOST by virtue of EO 128, and our mandates are to establish a science and technology data bank and library, to disseminate science and technology information, undertake training on science and technology information. And attached to those mandates, we have this mission, which is first to provide accurate, relevant, and timely STI information or science, technology, and innovation information through resource sharing and efficient delivery systems, promote public awareness, understanding, and appreciation of STI in national development, and capacitate key stakeholders as partners and advocates in building an STI culture. So sa aming division, which is the Communication Resources and Production Division, we do many initiatives in communicating science to the people, and we handle different platforms. Yung mga pictures dito below are some examples. So we have broadcast, which is the DOS TV. We also have, as mentioned earlier, the SNT Post, which is our official publication. And then we handle the social media account for the DOST. And then we also have advocacy on training next generation science journalists, which is our Science Journal initiative. And then we also have the Philippine Journal of Science, which is the oldest scientific journal in the Philippines. So ito na-mention na to kanina ni Ma'am Angeli, that science isn't finished until it's communicated. This is, if I may say, the guiding principle, I guess, of STII and all science communicators, and also even technology transfer specialists. Kasi we all believe that science should not be confined in laboratories, kasi it is not effective or it is useless if it's not realized by the people. And syempre, when we say science communication, this picture very well sums it up. So some people think that communicating science or science itself is very intimidating. And ito yung lagi natin nakikita. When we say science, we imagine numbers, we imagine hard figures, we imagine complexity. And science communication, yun yung role ng science communication on how to communicate science from scientists to the layman. This picture here, it is a general framework of science communication. So nabanggit na kanina ni Ma'am Angeli yung science communication modes. And here, well, science communication is an encompassing concept. And science communication is an ecosystem of multiple players. So dito makikita po natin na there is communication between scientists or among scientists. So yun po ang yun ang purpose ng technical papers or technical journals. So the mode of science communication depends on your communication objective. So if you would like to talk to your fellow scientists, most likely ito ay through technical journals, technical papers. And then, but as Miss Angeli mentioned earlier, hindi dapat confined within the science community yung information. That's why dun pumapasok yung role ng science journalists and other science communicators. And it depends on the objective, as I mentioned earlier. So normally for science journalists, it is to report back to the public the information, the scientific information. In other instances naman, for PR or press officers connected to scientists, mostly it is to translate the information into a more understandable format depending on its use. For example, it could be used for policymakers or even for grant funders. So yung mga ganong purposes kasi as mentioned kanina nga ni Miss Angeli din, scientists per se are not expert in laymanizing their own findings. Kaya it is very important that science communication ecosystem is active and actively played by the different key stakeholders. And when we say science communication, merong two generally accepted models. One is the deficit model and the other is the dialogue model. For the deficit model, sinasabi nila ito yung medyo traditional model wherein the information are one way na binibigay from the experts to the general public. And then the dialogue model, the general public is part of the discourse. So for the deficit model, it is assumed that the public has zero or limited knowledge, wherein in the dialogue model, the public is knowledgeable and can contribute in the discourse. But I would like to clarify na walang tamang model dito or walang better model than the other kasi it depends on the use. So the deficit model, most of the time, this is used for new breakthroughs, for new information na most of the time ay hindi pa rin alam ng mga tao. And then for the dialogue model naman, this is very important in terms of policy making or decision making. For example, in disaster risk reduction, mitigation, and kasi considered yung local knowledge of the public. So basically, communication is very central in science. Kasi without communication, science is useless. It would be redundant and it is confined in just a small group. And sharing ideas is essential to evolution of every scientific field. So without communication in science, there will never be progress. So dito papasok din yung issue for the traditional science journalism. Maybe as we are all aware, the traditional science journalism, there is a widespread decline of traditional publication. So these are our challenges. So nakikita nyo ngayon, bumaba na yung readership for regional newspapers and magazines. And then science beats are considered unsellable. Kasi nga, well, at least locally for the Philippines, science is not part of our general favor, kumbaga. This is not something na lagi nating tinitignan. We always look into something juicier, kumbaga. So more on politics, more on showbiz, etc. And this becomes a major challenge for science journalism kasi in the end, still may money involved kasi when we say science journalism, money involved in a sense that for it to be sustainable, we need funding. And in the end, yung mga publication kasi they need to make money for them to be able to be published, for them to be able to make their businesses sustainable. And then yun din, sunod-sunod na yun. So it's a trickle effect. So because of that, nagkakaroon ng aging science journalists, especially in the Philippines. So hindi na nagkakaroon ng next generation journalists because they think that science journalism is not a lucrative career. Wala masyadong pera when you consider it as main source of income or livelihood. So this is in terms of science or traditional science journalism, but there is a silver lining, and I think you already know where I will be going kasi this refers to mobile journalism and social media. So more than half of all the people on earth already social media. That's why it becomes a very viable platform for science communication. And in fact, in July 2020, total population ng mundo is 7.79 billion. And then ang unique mobile phone users ay already 5.15 billion, which is 66% of the population. And out of that, ang active social media users ay 3.96 billion or 51% of the global population. So if you are looking for reach in terms of your communication initiatives, of course, the digital world or social media is a very viable platform. And ito yung in terms of increase naman. Oh, sorry. So it's continually increasing. And this is even during pandemic pa, in July. So kasagsagan to ng pandemic. So the typical global user already spends about 40% of their waking life online. So on average, it is 6 hours and 42 minutes. People are using the internet for 6 hours and 42 minutes on average globally. But the more interesting is if you look sa figures ng Philippines. So for Filipinos, we normally use the internet on average at 9 hours and 45 minutes per day, which is way, way above the worldwide or the global average of 6 hours and 43 minutes. So ibig sabihin, if you would like to communicate to the general public, especially if you would like to communicate science, the internet is a very viable platform. It is more viable than anything else right now, especially with the printed materials. Now with the challenges of COVID, yung challenges of distribution, etc. With the internet, it's just one click away. And in terms of the digital activities natin, 54% of the population watches movies or streaming services, YouTube videos, etc. And then 43% use social media. And then for the social media platforms, of course, number one pa rin ang Facebook, which is 2,603 compared to other social media platforms. So what am I driving at? So this gives us a silver lining, or what we say a rise of new age science journalism, especially for the DOST, at least for STII. This is one of our ways to pivot around the global pandemic and to if I may say, exploit the very viable platform. So of course we know that there are publications or newspapers that also transition their publications online. So ang ginagawa natin is kino-cross-post natin sila, which makes it more effective. Kasi before, we only depend on the distribution of the publications or the newspapers. But now, cross-posting is very possible. That's why amplification of messages is more viable and easier compared before. So example lang natin, the news about DOST or the news about breakthroughs from DOST. For the example dito na virgin coconut oil lowers coronavirus load by 60 to 90% for mild cases. We reached, ito ay as of today, so we reached 20,610 people. So imagine reaching this with very minimal costs. So we don't need to print anything, you don't need to publish, or you don't need to pay for logistics. Just use internet and Facebook is free basically. So it is a very cost-effective way of using the platform to communicate your messages, especially science messages. And eto rin, these are also some of our examples. So sa Science Journal page, this is our advocacy page of encouraging the younger generation to be more inclined into science. And eto din, so we are, even the way that we deliver, or the way that we deliver our programs and our initiatives. So that's similar to this one, we now have webinars compared before na very expensive mag-organize ng mga webinars or training like this kasi you have to pay for the venue, for the food, etc. But if you can do it online, you can reach more people at less cost. And also the new age of science journalism, it gave birth to younger generations to be into science journalism. For example, this one, Flip Science. It is a Facebook page or an online platform that was created by two millennials who are very passionate in communicating science. So because of social media and the internet, nagkaroon ng cheaper alternative for people to be able to publish their stories. And also for us, for the DOS TV, we exploited the internet to broadcast our episodes or our programs in for much less cost. Kasi before, imagine if you have to publish or to broadcast via mainstream TV stations. Imagine how many millions, di ba? How many millions it would cost. But for now, if you publish it on Facebook, it is relatively cheaper. And the reach is, as I mentioned, almost 80% of Filipinos are already into Facebook. So you have potentially, you can reach 80% of Filipinos. And also, since mas madali na, mas accessible ang Facebook and social media, it also allowed the scientists themselves to communicate directly to the public. So for this instance, if you're familiar with Reina Bel Reyes, the Filipina who proved Einstein right, so she used Facebook and YouTube to create materials, video contents explaining science concepts. So it became much easier for her to reach her target audience. And also ito yung sa TikTok, si Kiliman Guru. I'm not sure if you are familiar, but he's the one who explains most of the time yung mga medical concepts that are often misunderstood by the general public. And so, in spite of the decline in traditional science journalism, it is needed now more than ever. Although, as I mentioned earlier, that social media is a very viable platform, we should always remember that social media is, compared to others or similar to others, it is just a tool. And compared to any other tool, it has positive effects and negative effects. So alam naman natin that social media is very accessible to many people, and it's very easy to broadcast via social media, which makes it very dangerous as well, because social media can be used for misinformation, for wrong information, or for even fake news. That's why as tayo, yung role natin as science communicators, as science journalists, it is needed now more than ever kasi we need to counter those kind of misinformation. And then in the end, we always need to go back to our core, which is to be inquisitive and critical. As science journalists, or even for science teachers and science communicators, I hope that we consider our role to, when we impart knowledge regarding science, we teach science or we tell about science not as a series of facts only, but a process of acquiring knowledge, to be critical, and a process of how it could be applied to our daily decision making. So ito yung hinihiling ko rin sa mga kasama natin dito sa media and sa mga partners natin na science communicators and even teachers. We hope that will help us spark conversations about critical issues regarding science. Hindi lang kung about science or about scientists or about research, but we also need to talk about why do we need to believe in science, especially now. We know that science, not only scientists, but science itself is being attacked. So maraming nagsasabi na science is not true, or they consider that science is wrong. So alam niyo yun, even there are multiple or voluminous information, proven information regarding certain topics, some people still often choose not to believe science. So it is our role to make people believe in science. And also, for the Philippines itself, are Filipino scientists receiving enough support to do good science? And do we need more budget for research and innovation? So these are very critical concepts or critical ideas that I hope we as science communicators also spark conversation around. And this is my last slide. So I mentioned earlier that the traditional science journalism is declining, maybe because of the cost, or maybe because of the shift in technology or the paradigm shift overall. However, I believe that it's not the real challenge. The actual real challenge is to stand with the unpopular. And in this case, science has always been unpopular. And I guess it depends on our resolve, on that we stand with science and that we communicate as scientists, as science communicators, as science teachers, as science journalists, that science is not just a series of facts, but in fact, science makes the world go round, kumbaga. That's why it depends on our resolve that the future of science journalism and the future of acceptance of science would be realized. And with that, thank you.
Thank you, Sir Norley, for that very enlightening presentation. Medyo exciting nga po yung inyo pong presentation, sir. Actually, on our chat box, may mga questions, particularly po sa inyong presentations. And we'll discuss them, we'll answer them later. Again, if you have questions or comments dun sa mga presentation po ng ating panelists, just drop your questions sa Q&A po na chat box po natin. Thank you. We'll go now sa ating next lecturer to discuss on tips from a science journalist is Mr. Rodolfo P. de Guzman, Senior Science Specialist. Mr. de Guzman, or Sir Rudy for short, is known for his passion in delivering good message through his writings and publications. He is the current editor-in-chief of the SNT Post, the official quarterly magazine of the OST, as well as the head of content development and social editorial section of the Communication Resources and Production Division. He started his career in 1988 as a communication officer and built his expertise in content development for science and technology in government service since 2013. He was also involved in the strategic communication as senior research specialist in Project NOAA. A graduate of Ateneo de Manila University in Business Management, and has been involved in corporate communication for the past 2 years. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Mr. Rodolfo P. de Guzman. Sir?
Thank you. Thank you very much. So can I share my screen? Let me navigate first with this new technology. Okay, so can everyone see the presentation? It's okay, yeah. Okay, so thank you very much, Sir Romy, for that kind introduction. Thank you very much also. I would like to thank the OSC Region 2 for organizing this webinar, to Director Sancho Maborang, and of course to our guests, Director Angeli from PIA, and my bosses, si Director Richard Burgos and Sir Norley. Um, I'm very privileged to be with you in the company of great communicators. And I'm humbled by their presentations. Napakagaling na kanilang mga presentations. Parang ayoko nang mag-present. Hindi, kidding aside. Okay, so we learned a lot from the previous presenters and so many insights. We learned a lot from the insights, from the trends that we're now facing, particularly in this time of pandemic. So my presentation is titled "Why Write About Science and Technology." When my colleagues said that hindi nga popular ang science, di ba? Rarely does a science story land on the front pages of newspapers or in social media. Mostly, ito ay yung, what do you call this, movies, celebrities, athletes, and politics. But I think it is now high time for us to put science and technology at the forefront of communication. So, start, why do we do this? We at the Science and Technology Information Institute, with our mandate, we really want to promote science, technology, and innovation in order to create a science culture. Because we will go back to what we're discussing earlier, na hindi popular ang science because we don't have, as a country, we're not our mindset is not on science and technology. Unlike our other Asian countries who are now reaping the benefits of science and technology, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, all of these have very strong science culture. And that is what we want to do. That's what we want to achieve as far as STII is concerned. So, bakit tayo nagko-communicate? Of course, we want to communicate messages. We want to communicate science, technology, and innovation. And we want to commune. By communicating, we want to send the message that we are bearers of good news. We are bearers of information that will create a positive impact in our communities. So if you would see, if you are familiar with Nas Daily, so he's a content creator, no, not necessarily science, but he became very popular because of his 60-second videos. He goes around the world and he tries to get information, process it, and deliver it to his intended audience. Kaya tingnan mo, meron siyang 5 million followers. So yun, no? We really want to communicate. We really want to bring information closer to the people. So this is like going back lang. I know our audience is composed of communicators, journalists, and we always go back to the basic model of communication, which is very simple. No, we have a message. We want to say something, and there is the bearer of the news. There is the sender of the message, and of course the receiver. And in between are the communication channels that are now being used. Before, several years back, we only have newspapers, radio, television. With the advent of the internet, biglang bumilis, naging borderless, kumbaga, no? Ang ating communication efforts and initiatives. We can reach so many people in just split second. That's why lumabas ngayon ang social media, which is now, I would not say emerging technology, because it is already here with us. We are now experiencing it, especially now in the time of pandemic. We now realize the value of social media. Although it is a double-edged sword, it's fast, we can communicate faster, reach more audience, but we really have to be very careful with what we say, in what we post. So sabi nga ni Howie Severino, di ba? Think before you click. Because at the speed of the internet, kakalat na yung balita mo, whether it's good, whether it's bad. So that's why I said it's a double-edged sword. So it must be used very judiciously. And of course, sa atin, science communicators, as in the DOST, as in the Science and Technology Information Institute, we're used to the acronym IEC, which is to inform, to educate, and to communicate. But I would like to have a different twist to that. No, IEC again, you have to inform, of course, to raise the level of awareness, because we noticed in 2016 we commissioned the social weather station, and we found out that the level of awareness on science and technology in general is very low at 6%. Come 2018, it increased a little bit to 13%. Then in 2019, we again improved a little more to 16% level of awareness. But 16% is just a very, very small figure uh, to compare to other uh, news, to other areas that we are used to. Like, for example, uh, education is a very good topic. That's why it has a lot of awareness, the high level of awareness. And of course, we want to educate. By being science communicator, we want to educate and translate the information, the jargon of science to the layman. You know? And I would probably add something more to that. Na we not only laymanize our information or the data that we do get from our scientists and researchers, we make it popular. I would rather use the word popularizing science, no? Because there are instances that we don't necessarily have to translate, or we don't necessarily have to convert a scientific term into layman's term. Minsan kasi wala siyang exact translation. So it will be very funny for us to translate something that will be highly scientific or highly technical. And of course, we want to engage our audience, as mentioned by my colleagues earlier, that we, as communicators, we really have to establish and identify the specific audiences that we want to touch or to reach. Okay, and of course, we want to convert them. It's very frustrating if we just talk or discuss or inform our audience without getting them converted to think about science and technology that will make great impact in their lives. And in the process, we now transform them into advocates of science and technology for us to eventually uh, embrace a culture of science. So that is mainly our task as communicators. So I would just like to read a quote from Anthony Tucker, one of the science editors of the British newspaper The Guardian. Medyo ano na siya, hindi na siya millennial, but he started with The Guardian, and he says, science writers, like all other journalists, must have an insatiable appetite for reading, and the best are endowed with a memory like a filing cabinet. So dito ang naano ko is reading. You know? To be a good science journalist, you have to read a lot. You have to do your research. You have to read a lot of books. You have to read a lot of information for you to have a stock knowledge of what you will be conveying to your audiences. So that is very important. And ito yun, one of the samples of his article way back in 1974. So those were the times when space satellites probably are very famous. Uh, these are the trending topics before. And you would notice it's very simple. Space satellites show you new ice age coming past. But meron siyang kicker, di ba? Ice age, wow. Ano yun, di ba? Parang it will pick your imagination as a reader. So that's also very important for a communicator to consider your audience and what our audience would like to see or would like to read, because it is experiential. Actually, reading in a newspaper, a book, uh, broadcasting in radio, in television is experiential, and we really have to cater to the need of the audience. What would they like to hear? What would they like to watch? So yun ating takeaway there. So communicating science. A science communicator, I myself is new to the job. I have been in the communications profession for more than 2 decades, but mostly I came from the private sector, so ito ay corporate communications. I entered DOST only in 2013, and I was really, hindi naman shocked, but I had a realization, as mentioned by my other colleagues, hindi popular kasi ang science topic. And I was really surprised when I entered in 2013 that there are a lot of inventions, innovations that I myself do not know. So what more the other people outside of the DOST system or outside of the community science community. So most probably they don't know it also. That's why when I came in, sabi ko, it will be also part of my advocacy. Although I don't have any background in science, I, I saw the wisdom of coming up with an advocacy in communicating science, bringing science closer to the people, which is now the mantra of the DOST, Science for the People. So as mentioned earlier also, ano ba yun? What does it take to be a science communicator? Simply put, you just tell a story. Okay? Whether it's a news story, it's a feature story, it's a creative story, but still it's a story, no? Because people by nature love to hear stories. Iba-iba nga lang yon, ano? Merong straight news, which is a story by itself, but it's straight news as far as delivery is concerned. But meron naman yung mas in-depth, sinusulat, bino-broadcast, something, a story that has impact in our lives, no? That will benefit the audience. So, iba-iba lang yon yung stories natin. But as communicators, we should also be storytellers. We have to be good storytellers. So, and to be good storytellers, there are ingredients, no? So, just like a chef that needs a lot of ingredients to come up with a very delicious, appetizing dish. So meron po tayo. So this we learned, I myself learned from Tina Dumlao of the Philippine Daily Inquirer. So sabi niya, for a good story to be really picked up by the news agencies, it has to have prominence. By prominence, we mean you highlight somebody who's famous, popular already, na pwede mong gamitin, no? You can utilize the popularity of that personality. So kung mataas na ang popularity ng ating secretary, you can begin your story by having a quote from the secretary or from any important person. So importance, of course, a good story must have the importance. Ano ba yun? No? You always go back to your audience. How important is this to my readers, to my audience? Kasi kung walang importance, wala lang. The attention span of our audience usually is 3 seconds, 5 seconds, baka matagal na yung 10 seconds and they will flip the magazine, or flip the newspaper, or click the internet and go to something somewhere else. And then human interest. Ito yung pinakamaganda. To have your story that will connect to your audience, it has to have a human interest angle. How can I relate? Ako, si ordinaryong Juan, ordinaryong Maria. Ano ba importansya nito sa akin? No? So a discovery, for example, of let's say the vaccine. No? So how important is that to me, to the ordinary person? How if you come up with an innovation that will improve travel, human interest yun. Kasi lahat tayo nagko-commute, lahat tayo may sasakyan na ginagamit. So timeliness is also one critical factor to consider for your good story. So minsan timing. So there are instances na maganda yung pagkakasulat, maganda yung storya mo, but it becomes irrelevant because hindi siya timely. So kung ngayon pandemic lahat, no, actually we are now probably at the brink of information fatigue. Because for the past 8 months, we're very hearing COVID-19, we're hearing the pandemic, etc., etc. So kung may ipapasok ang isang balita, no matter how good it is, kung medyo mali ang timing, baka hindi rin ma-publish yan, hindi rin mapansin. Then proximity. Proximity means yung malapit din sa iyo, no? So if you're talking of a news, but kung national yan, may national impact, okay yon, no? But there are instances na, let's say, regional news. Malayo yon sa, let's say, Metro Manila. So something, a news coming from one of the regions may not be very interesting from someone in another region because of the proximity. They cannot relate. No? Yun ang importante. There must be relationship of the audience with a communicator. And meaning, of course, yung meaning. What's the real essence of the story? Ano ba yung gusto mong ipahatid? Ano yung gusto mong ipabaon doon sa ating readers, sa ating listeners, sa radio, sa TV? So, yun. Those are the ingredients that we would like to find in a good story. Kasi ayaw nating matulog. Di ba? Kasi pag boring yung subject mo, wala na. Lilipat na lang yan. So the process. It starts with the process, of course. Kung ikaw yung writer, no matter what area or field you are writing about, you really need to have more or less a structure to follow. It may not be cast in stone, but this will definitely help us to craft our stories. So of course, pre-writing step, nandiyan yung brainstorming, identifying what you want to write about, research, no? You do your research on that particular portion. Of course, you write the article, you revise, you rewrite, you revise, you rewrite, and that's what I also impart in my colleagues sa institute. You rewrite and rewrite and rewrite. You reread your articles because that makes it more. Should you say more? You will see the flaws, the gaps in your articles. Kung meron tayong nakulang na information, lalo na sa science, it's very important for us to be very accurate and correct in our facts. So you proofread. Proofreading is the step naman, just to look for errors in spelling, grammar, punctuation, and the mechanical errors. Para as writers, we really have to establish that also. And that increases the credibility of the writer. And of course, you publish it. As of now, marami na tayong platforms, not only print media, but of course, the internet, the social media. And there are three elements of good writing. No? So of course, your audience, again, I'm going back there, yun. You really have to bear in mind when you write, sino yung kakausapin ko? Sino yung makakabasa nito? You always go back to there. And of course, the purpose of writing, how important this is. No? To the person that I'm talking to, I want to send the message. Ano ba importansya na sa ito? Kasi there are instances when writers tend to write for themselves. We're not writing for ourselves. We're not writing for any organization or something, but we're writing for the audience. And of course, the format. The format will vary how you write. Iba ang pagkakasulat sa print, iba ang nagsusulat sa radio broadcast, sa TV broadcast, sa social media, of course, sa Twitter, sa other platforms. So, i-adjust lang natin. And then again, there are 5 C's of good writing, and I interjected one, the 6th one. So, of course, we have to make sure that our message is clear to our audience. That's why it's important for us to know who our audience is, because we adjust the style and the language of our articles. No? So, kung science yan, at you're talking of something that's very complex and you're intending to write for high school students, you have to adjust your writing style. You have to adjust your vocabularies and use of words, and of course the photograph will accompany them. And then, of course, correct. This is very, very important for us science writers to check and double check our facts. Okay, if we are to um, write about a research paper, just make sure that you get everything right, uh, and consult with the expert or the subject that you got the information from. And then, of course, you have to have a concise article. Wag naman yung mahaba, because we're not writing a novel. We're imparting information about science and technology. The more precise, the more concise, the better. No, simple, as Ma'am Angeli mentioned earlier. Simplicity is the best formula for us to hindi, again, kasi hindi tayo nagsusulat to impress. We write to inform. And the end goal there is for the audience to understand what we are talking about. So yun ang importante. So wala muna yung ego as writers. Medyo ano yun, isang tabi lang muna natin yun. And then of course, again, complete, no? Not only correct, but complete information should be conveyed. Mahirap yung bitin, no? Hindi kumpleto yung information mo, because questions will be raised on your article, on your broadcast. There will be questions that left unturned. So hindi madadigest yung information mo at ma-appreciate ng audience. And considerate. By considerate, again, you go back to your audience. No? Try to feel or visualize what your audience will do, or how they will react in your article, na in such a way na you write with the premise that you yourself will be the one to consume the information. So you consider the 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 sensibilities, lalo na, no, let's say we have to be a science journalist also, we have to be mindful of the gender and development, yung mga gender equality, gender sensitivity. We have to be careful with that. And again, connect to your source of information, to the scientists, to the researchers, from where you got the information. You have to have a strong connection with them. You have to build relationship with them, because hindi lang pang one shot deal yun, no? Like for example, in the DOST, that is already a daily grind. You interact with scientists, researchers, you get information, you write the article, you publish. The next day you do it the same. That's the same thing. So you really have to have a connection with both your audience and your resource experts. So ito, I will not delve much on this, because I think alam naman ito ng ating mga journalists and professionals that we follow the inverted pyramid. So just a reminder, yun lang, na we, as much as possible, if we can follow this format in writing, just be conscious about it, because the important thing is the headline and your initial paragraph, because the span of attention span of readers are very short. Ito, other models of how you go about writing your articles. Meron tinatawag na martini glass. So ganun din, there's the lead, there are the key facts in the inverted pyramid, and then the chronology of events, which will be more applicable to news articles on crime, fires, disasters, etc. And then, of course, there is another one, the kebab model, wherein you use anecdotes in your article, then the nut graph, which is the important things, information there, and of course the myth supports also more informations that are relevant and important and useful to the audience. And of course, you can also use anecdotes at the last part of your article. So, bakit ka gumagamit ng anecdote? Because that is the point of interaction of the writer to the audience, so people can relate. So how do you write the news? So again, basic, as a journalist, you have the 5 W's and the H. No? So alam na natin yan. And then science writers, we really have to be very objective. We just stick to the facts. Wala tayong opinion na gagawin. But if you're an opinion writer, fine. Pero we are journalists on science and technology. So we rely on facts and be objective on that. Wala tayong personal opinion or personal voice na ibibigay doon. And then the story should be kept simple and short. News stories usually not more than 400 words. Otherwise, tatama rin na yung magbabasa niyan. Lalo na ngayon sa internet. If the news is published digitally, few seconds lang yan, dilipat na yan. So preferably 250 to 300 words. Then of course, the article should be accompanied by a good photo, no? Because that's the old adage that a good photo tells a good story, no? Na without any words or something, basta maganda yung photo mo. So it is very important also for the writer to have a good relationship with your photographer. Kasi you work hand in hand, you know. So kung gumagawa ka, nagko-cover ka ng isang event or you do an article about a certain technology, it's very important for you to work closely with your photographer and discuss what angle of the picture that you want, ano yung makakapture mo, yung may tao, may movement, may galaw, na parang sinama mo siya kasama nung write-up mo, the picture will tell something about the article that you're writing about. And of course, you have to be consistent, no, with your style. Kung merong style guide ang isang institution or isang organization or news agency, they follow a certain guide, editorial guideline, and that should be followed by the writer. Depende yun, nagbabago yun in different institutions. So, yeah. And again, I said, in any writing, science, be it science or not, the headline should carry the article. No? Kasi yun ang unang makikita ng ating audience. If the headline is too long, hindi rin babasahin. Kung yung use of words mo very bland, hindi forceful, hindi rin makakapture. They will not be engaged to read on. They will not be encouraged to look further down the article. So yun, again, I would just like to reiterate that to have a nice article, it must be understood, it is informative, relatable, and at times entertaining. Kasi may certain pull ang entertainment, you know, something light in the article, it will not be that bad. Pwede naman yun, no? So, ang lead paragraph natin, siguro just 2 or 3 sentences, but it says it all, more or less, of what you want to say. And use powerful and descriptive words. Ito yung talagang pag ano mo, napipicture mo, no? Hindi lang yung something na very flowery or what, as mentioned earlier, but concise pa rin siya, pero descriptive siya. Okay, science writing. So ano nga ba yun? So avoid jargon, no? And dun nga tayo, we want to laybanize, we want to popularize our writing, we want to make it simple. So we find ways to avoid the jargons. So it will help if we can ask the scientists themselves, the researchers, ano ba yung pinakamalapit na pwede natin may explain. Kaya it's very important. I agree that the relationship between the scientists and the communicators should be solid. No? So, yun lang. And then of course there are sentences that we can use as starters, words to add an idea, words that can show cause, words that show contrast. Ito lang ay mga opening lines, opening phrases that you can use in your writing. And of course, yung sabi ko, powerful words. You can also browse through this and pick your choice depende dun sa character ng yung content ng yung article mo. So, and then you can also adjust that also again to your audience. baka naman masyadong highfalutin yung ating word. Make it more simple, no? And kanina napakita niyo rin to yung mga words that are scientific terms na iba ang nagiging meaning sa public pag ang interpretation nila. And so we find ways to make it more down to earth, more understandable, na everyday use, common words is much better than using complex words. So this is one example ng headline that will probably pick the interest of the readers, no? Kasi parang pinag-uusapan, toilet in the Philippines can be found where? Di ba parang, saan yun? So that's what we want as writers. We want to engage and we want to hold our audience for that short period of time. And then, kung maganda yung ating headline or title, they will be encouraged to read on. And meron pa nga siyang ginamit na common word, no? Which is in the vernacular, which is the vernacular for the toilet in Filipino. So yun, using those words can really capture their attention of our audience and they can relate na pwede nilang basahin down to the last sentence. Yeah, mga ganito rin, they use very popular words that can relate to the audience. Ayan. So ito naman, yung Biocontrol Boost Mandarin Production. This is one example of a very simple title, but very interesting and that people will continue reading. Ano mga ba ito? Yung biocontrol. No? It's something new that will pick their imagination and their curiosity. Kasi you have to play on that particular aspect of the human side. No? Ano yung magiging curious yung tao to read on. So ito naman, ganun, straightforward, straight news. So iba-ibang style lang yan. So expert in news call for separate vaccine body because this is very timely. We're talking about the pandemic, about the vaccine, and the style of writing is there. They use the blurb that is what we need to give, etc., etc. And ang ano niya is ang lead paragraph niya supports the title. So importante yan. And down the line, you practice the inverted pyramid as you go along. So ito naman, medyo nag-deviate siya do sa mga straight news because he's a columnist. So medyo may palabok siya sa first 4 paragraphs. Yung support niya for the headline comes on the 5th paragraph by mentioning the 4th Industrial Revolution. Pwede rin yan, no? It can work. Again, you go back to your audience. Sino ba yung gusto mong kausapin? And that's where you will find the style of writing and the format of your article. So dito you can check out later siguro. These are articles that have been written by our staff sa STII and they have been published. So you can go to the links later on and try to see the kind of writing that we are doing. Both for publication, for mainstream media, and for our own internet publications. Yung SND Post, Balitang Rapidos, those digest, those are the popular publications that we have, regular publications. So writing tips, ano ba yun? So just, I mentioned some of this already, but to reiterate this, just choose a title that draws attention, lagi. And of course, find out all you can about your topic. Research, research, and research, particularly for science writers. You really have to get the right terms, lalo na yung mga scientific terms. It's okay for you to use scientific terms, but meron itong yung layman's term. Usually you see that, no? Naka-parenthesis yung common term. Or, so let's say moringa is what? Malunggay, di ba? So if you use that in your article, you can probably use the scientific name side by side with the common name for you to again relate to your audience. Then organize your ideas. Dito na pumapasok yung planning, yung what do you call this, yung research mo, how you organize your ideas and follow the inverted pyramid. Then you can add your own style. Sa amin, sa STII, we have several writers. They have different styles. And we encourage that, no? Para hindi boring. Kasi kung kami, let's say we have 5 writers, 6 writers in the magazine for the SNT Post. Kung pare-pareho style nyo, boring yung magazine mo. So we encourage the writer to come up with his own or her own style, but importante lang the veracity of your facts. So we leave that to the writer. Then of course, always include interesting information. Ano ba yung magkiklik? So nung pumutok ang Dolomite, you want to write about Dolomite, di ba? So that's very interesting. It's a very hot topic. It's a trending topic, di ba? To the verge of controversy. Pero hindi naman tayo pupunta doon. Of course, as science writers, we avoid those things. We just stick to the facts. So make sure you stick to the topic. Yan lang yan lagi. You don't deviate. Minsan kasi we're trying to put in one article so many ideas. You just focus on one and build on that. Para yung audience mo rin, focused siya. Then if you want to write about the other topics, you can write in a separate article. Then use words wisely. Ito yung sinasabi ko, choose your words na minsan may words na useless, di ba? Kaya makikita mo ang mga editors, ko-cross out lang yan, and there, let's say 3 words in a phrase that can be said only in 1 word. So make sure na you choose your words wisely. Then remember the good grammar, of course. Basic yan. Hindi na natin yan sasabihin. And then, of course, we really, again, reread and revise your writing. Kami sa STII, several revisions bago maibigay yan sa approving body bago ma-publish. Because we really have to go back to our writing. You edit your own work before you submit it to your editor for publication. And then, of course, you have to enjoy writing. You cannot write about anything that you don't enjoy, especially the topic. No? Like, for example, sa amin, sa STII, we practice the beat system. Similarly with the newspapers and other news agencies, they have certain beats. So sa amin, let's say may bit kami nagko-concentrate sa mga RDIs. So anything that news na meron, silang in charge doon. Meron in charge sa disaster agencies natin, Pag-asa, PBOX, PNRI, doon sila naka-assign. So we practice that para maging mas systematic ang management mo of your communication initiatives. And more tips. Dami, ano? Mahaba na ba ako? Overtime. So of course, you have to have the N for N or nose for the news. So kinakailangan matalas ang pakiramdam mo sa balita. And ma-connect mo. Kasi there was one time, I think, I don't know when, what's that? The last year ba yun? When Catriona Gray won the Miss Universe. Okay? So we thought of, sabi namin, okay, nanalo siya, popular siya, and that particular day, trending siya, di ba? So sabi natin, paano kaya ito? Pwede ba nating i-exploit yung situation? And we came up with a social media post na itinay up namin sa Diwata satellite because Miss Universe won ang Pilipinas sa Miss Universe and parang sinabi namin na we are also conquering the universe through our Diwata satellite. So na-connect mo to something that's trending during that time. And masaya naman kami, nag-trend din naman yung aming post sa social media. So yung ganon, the reporter should have or the writer should have that nose for news. Then of course, kasama doon yung curiosity mo. You have to be curious. Then you know your audience, limit your message, one idea at a time. Find a different angle. Makikita mo there are so many, there's a single topic that's being discussed in several newspapers, pero iba-iba ang angulo. So as a writer, you should find that one. Kahit nagko-cover ka, pag nagko-cover ka ng isang event, ng isang press conference, ang daming pinagsasasabi, di ba? Ang daming topics, ang daming dinidiscuss. As a writer, o sorry, journalist, hindi naman kinakailangan kunin mo lahat eh. You just identify for yourself. Ano ba yung sa tingin mo mag-click, di ba? And then you write about it. And then put a different slant on that, a different angle. Kumbaga, ibang pananaw sa Tagalog. No? And then capitalize on the benefit of what that particular topic you're writing about give to your readers. Importante yun. And then quotes. You can use quotes, one or two in an article. But as Ma'am Tina Dumlao of Inquirer said, you just use it sparingly. Chili flakes ang sabi niya. Just the right spice. Hindi masyadong maanghang, hindi naman masyadong matabang. So kasi pag tinagtad mo naman ng isang katutak na quotation yun, eh, pangit din. Di ba? So, and you choose your quotes. Something that's memorable, yung maaalala. Not just put anything na sinabi ng speaker or resource person. You also discern. You judge for yourself, which is impactful as far as the quote is concerned. And then when you're writing, minsan may sinasabi sila writer's block or something like that. Sa amin, sa most of our writers, pagka meron kaming idea, we just go into it. Wala mo nang concern sa grammar, walang concern sa format, etc., etc. Because you go through the process of editing and re-editing your work. Basta importante, you just go down and do it and write down. And then in the process of editing, you slim down, you trim some fat, you trim some unnecessary words, replace it with more precise words, strong words, action words. So yun yung gagawin mo. And then again, as I mentioned, you follow an editorial style guide. So iba-ibang institusyon, may iba-iba yan. Ang Inquirer, ibang ang editorial style guide. Ang BBC, iba yan. Ang Washington Post, iba. Ang Philippine Star, iba. So nagbabago yon depende sa organization. Okay? And then of course, you really have to read a lot. Because by reading a lot, you gain a lot of vocabulary. Kasi marami kang dapat synonym sa isang word. So para hindi maging kaumay-umay yung article mo. Di ba? Nakaka-irita yun, di ba? Puro yun na lang ang word na yun. Provides. Di ba? So you think of other words. You provide, you assist, you give, and minsan simple words will just do fine, no? Instead of provide, give na lang. Yun naman ang ordinary na ginagamit natin, conversational English or something. That's why you really have to use your dictionary by your side, or you consult a digital dictionary right now. Diba? There's no harm by doing that. When in doubt, always consult the dictionary, consult the thesaurus and everything. And then write, rewrite, and rewrite. And the last one is to build personal contacts. Kasi as a science journalist and as a reporter, you really have to have that rapport with your resource persons. You have to establish trust. Kasi kanina sinasabi, most scientists would be very reluctant to share their information. Bakit? Kasi baka ibigay mo sa iba or share mo sa iba na hindi na dapat, di ba? Kaya it's very important for you to build the trust from the scientists, from the researchers and the experts that you want to write about. Doon ang nangyayari ngayon yun. And most journalists do that, no? Yung mainstream. Kilala na nila yung mga personalities na na madalas nilang i-interviewin, and nakakapag-establish sila ng certain trust. And by doing that, you get information that other journalists will not be able to access kasi may trust kayo. No? So something like that. But again, careful pag sinabing off the record. Pag sinabing pwede mo nang ilabas to, sige, ilabas mo na. Open to the public na. So you respect also. There's a certain respect that comes with it. So yung sinabi kanina ni Sir Norley, we're now gearing towards mobile journalism. Ang dami na, di ba? Pumutok siya bigla because of the pandemic. We were forced into it. No? Although the trend is increasing year in and year out. But yun nga, kahit ng mga, of course, millennials are into the mobile journalism. Even mainstream journalists use Twitter, use other platforms, Instagram to report. Di ba? And that's the trend now. And kahit ngayon, mga millennials, tulad ko, millennials na ako, feeling millennial, kinakailangan mo sumunod. No? Kinakailangan mo mag-adjust. Because the bottom line, again, as journalists, as communicators, is for you to deliver the message to your audience. No matter what the platform is, you have to deliver. Diba? Kaya kinakailangan mag-adjust ka na. Kung ang trend mo ay through social media, you go heavy on social media. So yun lang yan. So ayan, yung kanina, mga pinakita, if you are writing for social media, Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, may mga ano rin yan, may mga rules pa, kumbaga guidelines that we can follow. So mga time kung kailan mo ipopost yan, kung kailan, like for example, Facebook, ideally it should be around 11 o'clock in the morning to 1 p.m. Kasi doon mas maraming nagpa-browse ng kanilang internet. So depende sa platform. So mga Twitter, maiiksi lang yan. 16 words maximum or less will be fine, di ba? For you to be effective using the Twitter. And then Twitter is used by journalists to give blow-by-blow account of what's happening. So if you're covering an event, a press con, you can tweet, sinabi ni Secretary de la Peña, sinabi ni ganito, instantly ma-upload na yun. No? Instagram, more on photos, so you really have to be a good photographer also. So as a writer, it will be very advantageous to you if you can also hone your skill in photography. Kasi if you are trying to get the news via photo using the Instagram, you really have to know the basic guidelines on how to take a good photograph. And then other platforms are available to us. Kaya lang, nag-iiba-iba siyempre yung style of writing mo din. Kung yan ay Facebook, yan ay Twitter, yan ay Instagram, yan LinkedIn. And from the traditional print media, online, sa website, iba-iba rin yun. Like for example, na-mention kanina, na we're gearing, as sa STII, we're gearing towards the digital platform. So we're trying to migrate our printed publications to the digital platform. And this will really take a different look, a different way on how to access articles, on how to read. So, but we're going towards that because that's the trend right now. So yun po. So, ang sa akin, takeaway, science writing is fun. Make it fun. Don't make it too difficult, too serious. Popularize it because that's the bottom line. Kulang na kulang tayo sa popular writing. Once in a blue moon, naglaland tayo sa front pages ng daily news, pero makikita mo, yun ay very malapit sa puso ng tao. Kaya napunta sa front page. Otherwise, if just another invention, it's just another innovation, hindi maglaland yun. Because culture-wise, we are more into chismis, showbiz news, personalities, scandals, and we are here as science journalists competing with a lot of information, a lot of news. So we really have to be creative. No? As writers, science writers, we have to be creative, resourceful, do your research, but be concise in writing, and of course, always look up to your audience, identify your audience when talking to them. So yun lang po. Happy morning. Good morning po sa inyo.
Thank you, Sir Rudy. Salamat po sa mga share niyong mga tips to make our papers and publications exciting with science and technology. Marami pong nagtatanong dito if they could get a copy of your presentations. Katulad din ng mga pinresent ni Sir Norley at saka ni Ma'am Anjali. Yes, we will give you po a copy of your presentations. We will send them through your email and also certificates dun sa mga email po na you use through the registration. Okay, we will now open yung ating floor for questions and comments. May mga questions po dito. We will answer them. Let me begin. Yung una pong mga question po dito, ito po ay galing po kay Sir Lucio Calimag, the Provincial Director ng Quirino. Sabi niya po rito, in my experience as a tech transfer person, kapag kami ay nagkakandak ng tech transfer, konti lang yung nag-attend the media. The media people, kahit na marami kaming in-invite. Pero pag celebrity daw po, dinadagsa. Any comment po from our panelists?
Yes, sir. I think I'll be the first to comment na lang po. So, sir, I can relate kasi I am also a tech transfer person and I understand na ganito nga po ang nangyayari. So, there's minimal interest from the media for tech transfer activities. But based on experience, what we always do is nakadepende po kasi yun sa media briefer na ibibigay nyo po sa mga media. So, always find a human interest aspect dun sa tech transfer activity. Kasi as I said earlier, yung media bits kasi is always ano yun, parang demand driven po kasi yun. So what is interesting, yun po yung kinakagat nila. So I recommend or I suggest that you always find the human interest aspect in all your projects, especially when you're dealing with the media and the public.
Thank you, sir. Can we hear also from Anjali?
Yes po, on the side of the media sector, sir. So, lagi nating nakakasama ang media. Tama po si Sir Norly. Kailangan po, ahead of time, magbigay ka na ng media briefer sa media. And for the information of everyone po, ang media have a lots of choices. May choice sila kung alin yung i-cover nila on that day. So, hindi po kailangan ura-urada, invite mo sila. Kasi they can turn down, lalo na kung makita nila yung topic. Halimbawa lang po, topic, transfer of technology, pero wala silang background on that topic. So ang tendency po, they will turn down and they will cover other topics na yun ang pasok sa kanilang beats na sinabi nga ni Sir Norly. So it's a yes po na dapat meron mo ng media briefer. And yung media briefer po, dapat din po written in a very organized manner. Sabi nga ni Sir Rudy kanina, nandun yung element of news. Hindi lang po hindi lang po yung all about the project. Kasi po, mabobore din po ang media kung sobrang text heavy yung ibibigay natin sa kanila na text briefer. Dapat it should be interesting, it should be written in a very organized manner na pagkita pa lang po ng media, ito, may magandang story, pupuntahan ko. So, ganun po dapat ay i-consider natin.
Salamat po, ma'am. Maganda po yung inyo pong mga suggestions. Definitely, we will do that. Thank you. Okay, for our next question, how can we address selective reading of the audiences, especially po sa social media? I think nag-volunteer po si Ma'am Anjali to answer this question.
Sir, I'm sorry, come again po. Nagbabasa kasi ako ng comments ng ating media.
Yes, ma'am. Yung question po dito, ma'am, is how can we address po yung selective reading?
Based on my personal opinion, sir, we cannot address that kasi we cannot control the interest of someone. Hindi po natin pwedeng i-control kung ano yung preferred readings ng isang online reader or online viewer. Sabi ko nga po kanina, it's all about how you write the story. Kasi po, kung interesting na yung sa headline mismo, sabi nga po ni Sir Rudy kanina, nandun na yung element of human interest, lahat-lahat na. Kung maganda po yung pagkasulat ng headline, babasahin po talaga ng online viewer. Then again po, wala po tayong control to them. Wala pong right formula para i-direct mo yung audience mo to read this article. It's all about how you write the article po. Nasa writer po yan and nasa source po yan kung paano nila i-package yung isang material para ma-arrest po yung attention ng online viewers. Reminder po, ang online viewers natin, in just a slip of the seconds po, maano na po sila, aalis na sila doon sa timeline kung hindi po maganda yung pagkasulat. Marami po silang, again, just like the journalist po, marami din silang choices eh. Marami silang mga platforms to visit. So it's all about how good the story is po. Doon nakasalalay yung kanilang interest. Thank you po.
Thank you, ma'am. From
Yeah,
other panelists?
yeah, I will just follow it up kay Ma'am Angeli na talagang yung headline mo will say it all, no? It's make or break it, lalo na sa social media. So sa amin, that's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to do kay Sir Norley. We have a social media team involved with that. Talagang we spend time brainstorming on what post that we want to come up with, and then the choice of words. So, kailangan ba Tagalog or whatever, yung maiintindihan to the extent na minsan gagamitin mo na yung very trending words. Yung hot word ngayon, no? Yung terminologies sa mga kabataan, no? Lalo na, ano ba yun? No? So, kailangan mo bang gumamit ng something that very popular right now, mga naol, di ba? Para mga ganon, no? Yung buzzwords. So you try to identify and then sasakyan mo yun, no? Na doon mag-focus yun. But also you have to balance it off, no? Na hindi naman siya maging very informal. Pero yun ang goal mo, sabi nga ni Ma'am Angelina, you really have to catch their attention in 1, 2, 3 seconds. Parang ganyan.
Sir,
Yes,
if I may add lang din, so I agree with Ma'am Angeline and kay Kuya Rudy kasi yung selective reading is a result of sobrang daming information, so sobrang dami nilang options. Kaya you are competing with thousands of content sa social media. In our case, what we try to do is to nasa format din kasi yun, you need to capture their attention. So kung pupuntahan niyo po yung website, yung Facebook page ng DOST, as much as possible, we make the pictures crisp. Tas yung format ay almost the same para ano siya, parang attention grabbing kumbaga. And we can at least compete with thousands of content online.
Thank you. Thank you po sa inyong mga answer. Yan po yung yes, ma'am.
In addition po, siguro dito na papasok yung importance ng having an information officer or government communicator sa parte ng DOST. Kasi mahalaga po talaga na merong spokesperson na nakakaintindi sa media industry and nakakaintindi sa side ng science. It's high time po siguro na i-consider natin yung importance ng social media, social marketing unit or information officer sa DOST. I hope nakikinig si Sir Sancho kasi mahalaga po talaga ang role ng information officers. I know po sa DOST, lahat po kayo ay mga scientists, mga experts in science, pero siguro po dagdagan din po natin yung communicators side para po mas madami po yung mag-promote sa mga programs natin. Thank you po.
Salamat po. Okay. Next na question po dito. Can you give us some links for all the sites you've presented so we can subscribe and receive all updates from Ms. Diana Malana? Sir Norley?
Yes. So sa amin po, yung present ko kasi kanina ay Facebook pages po yun ng DOST Philippines, and then we also have the STII Facebook page, we have the Science Journal page, and then the DOSTV Facebook page. Ano ko na lang po, isi-send ko na lang sa chat box para makita po ninyo yung links.
Salamat po. Okay. Sa ating mga attendees, ating participants, if you still have any questions, please drop your questions here po sa ating Q&A. The next question po dito, sabi niya po, how can we address problems na mas naniniwala po yung mga tao sa mga manghuhula or hearsay, but not very receptive sa mga sinasabi po ng mga experts? Any?
Siguro, ano ba, hindi naman fake news, ano? So siguro, myth. These are myth, no? Na nakasanayan natin, for example, na sabihin natin yung, what do you call this, pasma, di ba? So yung sa older generation, sasabihin nila, pawis na pawis ka, galing ka sa labas, extraneous exercise, etc. Then maliligo ka, mapapasma ka. But is there reality in that? Is there scientific basis for that? Wala, di ba? So you just show examples siguro. No? If you can show that in your short video, for example, or an expert that has really credibility talking about that, a doctor with credentials talaga talking about something to bust the myth. Parang gano'n, di ba? Myth buster ang dating mo doon to dispel those folklores or something. Baka it will help, no? It will help dispel the misconception. So, coming from experts, you can feature them, may quotation siya, or kung broadcast siya, radio, TV, pwede niya ipahayag yun na gano'n. Use an expert to tell them.
Thank you, sir. Any comment from the member of the panelists, Sir Norley?
Sige po. So the question is, how can we address yung problem na mas naniniwala pa sa non-scientific sources, kumbaga. I think medyo ano po kasi ito kumbaga deeply rooted sa culture kasi natin. So kumbaga this requires a paradigm shift. Ayun na yung sa aking opinion lang. And dahil doon, ang involvement po nito ay malaking role ng science communicators and even the teachers. Kasi I think the problem stems from the science itself as being unrelatable to the general public. So as science communicator, as science teachers, as science journalists, it is our role to make science relatable and even the scientists relatable to the general public para mas maniniwala sila.
Thank you po. Meron po atang nag-trending na ganyang case recently po sa Facebook, no? Yung isang legit na doktor, mas pinaboran pa po yung kwan. Yung hindi po well-experienced sa bagay po na ito. So yan talaga yung mga issues po natin. Thank you for your answers po. Okay. Our next question we have here from Miss Shirley Simangan of ISU Kawayan. Yung kanya pong tanong ay, how can we encourage yung mga scientists natin or to pursue their invention and discoveries sa kabila po ng kakulangan ng budget or facilities po? I think we can also hear from our regional director, Sir Sancho, for comment po dito. Sir Sam, may question po dito. Paano daw po natin encourage yung ating mga scientists despite po yung limitation po ng budget po?
Well, kung titignan naman natin yung investment ng probably I can say that the science community investment, not only with the DOST, if you will compare the investment 10 years ago in science, technology, and innovation, kasama na po dito ang mga state colleges and universities, ang Department of Science and Technology, ang Department of Agriculture, and other institutions. It has significantly increased. And I can say that from my experience and from my observations, the ecosystem has tremendously improved. In fact, the number of our laboratories have increased. Some of them are now world-class. The number of research funds have tremendously increased. In fact, in Region 2 alone, at the Department of Science and Technology, we are handling and managing about 260 million of investment in research and development. So I can say that, well, there may be some shall I say, requirements or shall I say limitations on budget, but compared to, as I said, compared in the last 10 years, we have significantly improved. In fact, ang Region 2 na lang ay nag-improve na malaki. Another thing, yung mga laboratories natin have tremendously increased. Kung titignan nyo po yung mga laboratories natin, well, the laboratories you need it for research and development have tremendously increased in numbers. And not only that, well-equipped ang ating mga laboratories to compete not only on the national arena, but as well as the international arena. We have been establishing R&D centers. In fact, tayo lang po ang region may dalawang R&D center, one at Isabela State University and the other one at NBSU. And this will increase the administration of on the creation of Fairness Opinion Board and Fairness Opinion Report has been launched in the region. So what does this mean? This means that we can expedite and facilitate the transactions between a technology generator and a technology user probably in the region. So this makes the ecosystem improve. This made the ecosystem improve. And I think that with our desire to encourage more researchers and improve the ecosystem in the region, this will further, shall I say, be an environment of progressive-minded and research-oriented individuals and institutions. So tuloy-tuloy lang po ang ating hindi ko po tinitignan. Sa ngayon po, ang problema natin is because basically ang ating pong research funds is anchored on project proposal. So ibig sabihin, kung wala kang magandang project proposal, hindi ka mapopondohan. So it means that you should translate your project proposals into the desires of the department. So meron no tayong priorities anchored on the Regional Development Plan and the Regional Development Council. And so you aligned your proposals based on these priorities. And Romy, I'd like to add to what Ma'am Angeli has mentioned about yung Science Information Officer. In fact, in the DOST region too, we have also identified this as one of the lacking, shall I say, formula, so that the DOST can become nearer to the people and to the community. Kasi nga hindi kami gaanong popular. That's why ang ginawa natin is in the last 5 years we have been hiring S&T practitioners and writers and journalists in the region. Ang problema ko lang dito sa region 2 ay wala tayong DevCom courses. Wala pong nag-o-offer ng DevCom. That's why ang Cagayan State University, we encourage them to open a DevCom course. And for 2021, they will open. Meron po tayong MASCOM . Iba po yung MASCOM, iba po yung DevCom. And I do not know, from my experience, I think na mas nakakatulong sa atin yung kurso ng DevCom. Siguro may explain ito ni Sir Rudy and Sir Norley. Bakit DevCom ang mas prepared natin? Some of the DevCom that we have hired in the past comes from the University of the Philippines pa, puro taga-UP yan. Kasi wala nga tayong courses in the region. But to be able to solve that problem na wala tayong mga human resource na competent, mag-o-offer na ng DevCom. So yun ang aking karagdagang sagot do sa ano ni Ma'am Angeli. Thank you.
Thank
By
you,
the
Sir
way,
Sam.
meron palang ano dito, DevCom daw, ang ibang colleges and universities. I'm not aware of this. Because yung aming po mga writer in the office are not DevCom, they are MASCOM. Iba po ang training ng MASCOM, iba po ang training ng MASCOM. We'd rather prepare po ang DevCom.
Okay. Salamat po sa inyo pong sagot. We have another question here for your comment. I think that one of the problem for science journalists and scientists is that there is very little appreciation for science information and science in general in the Philippines. They immediately think that it is hard and complicated. They also feel like because of the small budget allotted for science in the country, other countries will produce better results and will prefer information from other countries, even though it might not be suitable in the Philippine context. Any comment po sa sinabi po dito?
Sige sir, I'll comment po. Marami kasing issues I think involved dito sa comment na to from our participant. First, yung sa little appreciation for science information. I think this is related to what I said earlier na I believe even dun sa schools kasi, even in primary school, we teach science as if it is a series of facts, not as a series or not as a process of acquiring knowledge or making it relatable to our daily lives. I think yun yung naging challenge for us. Kaya as we grow older, we think science merely as parang pagkabisado ng formula or ng equation to solve a problem, etc. But yun yung challenge sa atin as science communicators and as teachers, that we make science relatable to everyday lives para they can appreciate it and relate it to their to how they live every day. And also most of the time kasi scientists are perceived to be very unreachable. Kumbaga, very technical, ang hirap nilang marating. So kami sa STII, that's also one of our initiatives. We humanize the scientists, kumbaga. We make them as if, hindi as if, we make them na kagaya natin, they are ordinary people, meron silang love life, meron silang personal struggles. So those things, we make them relatable so that the younger generation can relate to them and they can easily appreciate what they are doing for the society in general.
Thank you, sir. Yan din po yung halos question po ni Ma'am Shirley Simangan. Any other comment po? Ano po daw giving
Siguro sundan ko lang yung sinabi ni Sir Norley that we at STII we're trying really to innovate also in the modalities of our communication strategies, no? We're experimenting, so to speak, in other areas na magiging relatable sa tao. So we would like to go into more, actually we're going into more of social media right now. We're trying to veer away from the printed one. We're more on digital. We're trying to explore podcast. We're trying to explore the other platforms that is more being used by more people, no? And we also experimented on coming up with DOST ambassadors. Sa regions, it was nag-implement tayo before. Siguro si RD Sancho will agree. Meron tayong mga parang ambassadors, brand ambassadors sa regions. And then last year, we commissioned si Chris Chu, the basketball player and host of I Believe, to be the science ambassador. So para lang natin nga masubukan what is the effect of the celebrity status to help push science and technology as a very ordinary topic na ma-appreciate ng tao. So, and I think we we made quite a dent on that. Medyo naging visible din tayo because of the celebrity, but it takes a lot more. And as Sir Norley said, it's a mindset. It's cultural. It's the mindset that we have to change sa Pilipinas, sa atin, sa mga Pilipino, to really appreciate the science and technology as part of our life. Yun ang dapat eh. There's a paradigm shift talaga that we're working on together with our journalists, science communicators, educators. It's a whole of society approach siguro dapat eh, no? For us to really come up to the level of our ASEAN countries, no, neighbors, na endo na sila sa level na yun, na pati pondo nila sa R&D malaki. Hindi ganun because even their lawmakers siguro really appreciate the value of science and technology. Yun lang po.
Okay. Thank you, Sir Rudy. So ito po yung mga ginagawa po natin sa DOST, sa STII to popularize yung science in the public. Okay, another question po from Ma'am Shirley. Any advice daw po sa mga future scientists natin, researchers, or science journalists natin? Siguro para maka-level up with the common people po.
Start na ako.
Sige, sir.
Yun lang, I would just like to reiterate, as sinabi kasi lang ni Director Sancho na although communication lahat yan, no? Masscom, journalism, DevCom, those are all involved in communication. But syempre, iba-iba yung atake mo dyan. No? Iba-iba ang audience mo, iba-iba yung approaches, iba yung discipline na kailangan natin. And for science and technology, I agree that we really have to be more on the developmental communication side. Meaning, ang focus mo talaga is more on the product itself, the technologies, the innovations, and how to popularize it in such a way that ang mga magsasaka, ang mga mangingisda, ang ordinaryong tao will be able to appreciate kung ano yung ginagawa ng mga scientists. And we're also doing that nga, sabi ni Sir Norley, we're trying to humanize our scientists para yung perception ng mga kabataan na, ay, ayoko ng science, mahirap yan. Ayoko ng math, mahirap yan. Di ba? We have to eradicate that kind of notion na hindi tayo uunlad kung walang siyensya at teknolohiya. So something like that. And it will be a tedious process perhaps, but it's doable. No? It's doable. It's hard, but it's doable. Ano natin yun. So, ang tip lang is yun na, as a science writer, you really have to be very curious, inquisitive, magtanong ng magtanong, and then get your facts straight, verify, re-verify, write, rewrite, because practice makes perfect talaga sa writing. And of course, laging ang punto doon is you write for the audience, not for yourself.
Thank you, Sir Rudy. Sir Norley, any advice po?
Yes, I think yung same advice that I give to others then in any other career. When you want to be a future scientist, researcher, or science journalist, ang question dapat ay hindi kung anong gusto mo paglaki mo. It's more like anong problema ang gusto mong solusyonan. Kasi based on my experience then working with researchers, and ako mismo kasi I came in full circle, so I have research background and then tech transfer and then science communicator. Yung common denominator among scientists is they already realize that what they are doing is bigger than them. So, kumbaga, they're doing it for a bigger purpose, not necessarily for themselves. So, ayun lang yun. Once you realize that purpose, once you identify ano bang societal problem ang gusto kong solusyonan, it would be easier. Kumbaga, the realization will be easier. Of course, walang trabahong madali. Kahit ano man sa career na piliin mo dyan ay mahirap. But once you already have that resolve and you realize that purpose, then everything will fall into place.
Okay. Thank you. Ma'am Angeline, meron po kayo gustong sabihin?
Siguro po, ano po, advice lang po on the side of science on how to make journalists available to them. Siguro po, Sir Sancho and the other science expert here, let's foster an environment po siguro wherein ipapakita natin na yung agency natin or yung science per se is very reachable among journalists. Siguro po meron tayong regular kapihan with the media just to foster the environment po para ma-feel po ng journalist na science is not hard to understand. And yung parang kapihan po na nagkukwentuhan lang, sir, like barka-barkada, well, formal pa rin naman po yung topic, but the way you explain science to them po, wala po yung boundary doon na scientist ako and you are journalist, wala po. Tanggalin natin yung boundaries. Yung parang regular kwentuhan lang, sir. Para lang po i-introduce to them, siguro first stage, introduce to them na meron tayong breakthrough na ganito. And then the next month na naman siguro, sir, patawag na naman sila. Meron na naman tayong additional findings. Parang one at a time po. Huwag natin kasi silang biglain na ipatawag in one conference and then i-discuss lahat, sir. It takes time po for the journalist to appreciate din po yung science kasi syempre po, sabi ko nga kanina, ang daming choices ng journalist for a topic and science is just one. So let's foster a very convenient environment, sir, between science and the journalist or the media sector. Maganda po na ganun. May kapihan tayo, meron tayong kwentuhan with the media, kamustahan with the media, mga ganong program po, sir. Thank you po.
Salamat po. May we also hear from Sir Burgos.
Oh, okay.
Any comments, sir?
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to share something especially for aspiring science journalists. You listen to this set of statements. What is complicated is not popular. Do you agree? Yes or no? Science is complicated. Conclusion, therefore, it is not popular. Now, what is your stand with that kind of syllogism? Right? I think if you really want to be a science journalist worth your salt, you have to fight that syllogism because there's a fallacy there. You don't accept that, okay? It is not true that what is complicated is not popular. Okay? Kasi hindi lahat ng complicated na bagay ay hindi popular. Okay? Ang COVID-19 epidemic or pandemic is certainly very complicated and yet everybody is interested. All right? So it is popular. Okay? What I'm trying to drive at is we have to fight the status quo. And tingnan nyo lang ang nangyari sa the beginning of the year, 2020 is the year of the rat. Ang tingnan mo naman tayo ngayon para tayo talaga mga rat. Ano ha? And what did it start with? It started with a big boom. Pumutok ang Bulkan Taal, di ba? But that was a great moment to introduce new science terms in popular usage, like magmatic and phreatic. I think because Taal erupted, mas marami nakakaintindi kung ano yung phreatic eruption. Okay? So sometimes natural occurrences, phenomena around us, are good triggers to explain a science concept. In the pandemic, what is the term that we should all teach people to use? I think we can teach people to use the polymerase chain reaction. Very complicated, di ba? But you have to teach them to use that term because if they're asked, what kind of test do you want? They have to be able to articulate that they need to have the polymerase chain reaction test, not the rapid test. Okay? Kasi ang consequences nun ay nasa kanila. All right? So, para sa akin, yun ang punto ng science journalist. To make a complicated thing more easily relatable, understandable, something that I can use, I can appropriate because of what I need in my life. No? So yun ang talagang challenge ng ating science communicators. Now, the other thing I'd like to leave the participants with is this. Let's be excited with the future. Let's be excited with a technology-driven future. Because technology will help us with our jobs. Sino sa inyo ang mga plantito, plantita? Ha? So, uso yan ngayon, ano ha? So, mag-order ka ng plants somewhere, and what do you know? The next day, babahain ka ng offer ng other plants. Di ba? Napapansin nyo ba yan? So, technology is there because technology can sense already what are your areas of interest. And in fact, people are gathering together because of their common interests. You call them community of practice, community of interest, etc. Now, these communities will tend to congregate around bodies of knowledge and practice. Okay? Ganon din siguro sa science communication. We are not alone. There are younger people who are taking an interest in science. We just need to reach out to them so that we will have a bigger voice. Okay? And where do they congregate? Where do these people who are interested in science congregate? Yan ang ating challenge. To put a finger, to identify kung saan sila matatagpuan. Kasi doon, I'm sure, whatever you say about science and all its complications will find an interested audience. Okay? Okay, so artificial intelligence is going to make our job a bit easier in the future. Because if our articles are ready for publication, it can actually be driven, be channeled to spaces or groups or areas, all right, that are already interested in that subject. Okay? So, kailangan lang natin i-sharpen natin yung skill in producing materials, articles, memes, all right, posts, whatever, okay, videos, okay, that could be quickly relatable, quickly understandable, and quickly applicable to people's lives. So yun lang po. Let's be hopeful for the future. And we really need to fight the fallacy that what is complicated is not popular. Thank you.
Thank you po, Sir Richard. Salamat po sa inyong mga insights. Marami po ako natutunan. Definitely, yung ating mga participants, marami rin po sila natutunan. And I believe they're up to the challenge to make journalism, science journalism, maging popular po, even to the common people. Okay, wag po kayo mag-alala. We will be sending you copies of the presentations na nakita po natin. We will also send certificates po through your email. At this juncture, may we now hear from Assistant Regional Director Teresita A. Tabaog for her closing remarks. A virtual round of applause, please. Okay, habang hinihintay po natin si Ma'am Tess, we will be answering some of your questions po via your email. May mga nag-question po about virgin coconut oil. We will send them materials po directly sa inyo pong email para mas maganda po yung reading po ninyo. Okay, Ma'am Tess?
Okay, thank you very much, Romy. Naka-close pala yung aking video. Makaagham na umaga po sa ating lahat. For the successful conduct of this activity today, I would like to congratulate Engineer Sylvia T. Lacambra, the Provincial Science and Technology Director of Cagayan, for initiating this forum. And of course, to our Regional Director, Engineer Sancho Imaborang, for approving this activity as part of the Regional Science and Technology Week's celebration of DOS Region 2. I would say this is the first of its kind activity in the region conducted by DOS Region 2. For in the past, what we have been conducting were more on seminars and workshops related to science journalism, but not a forum like this. Thank you very much to PIA Region 2 as led by the very young and active Regional Director, Ma'am Angeli Mercado, who discussed on science and journalism. Thank you, Ma'am, for reminding everyone that science is something that is daily beneficial. Hence, its substance should be properly communicated to our captured audience. And for our forever thanks sa aming kapamilya, the Science and Technology Information Institute or STII, led by Dr. Richard P. Burgos. We are happy to note, sir, based on your sharing, that the OST as a whole is performing well at the top amidst this pandemic. Thank you too for the brilliant minds and rich experiences shared by our specialists from STII, Sir Norley B. Villar, the Chief Science Research Specialist who discussed on science, journalism, challenges, opportunities, and trends. Sister Norley po, he pointed on the importance of passion in science communication. Also, he challenged why should we need to believe in science? Most people do not believe in science, hence it is our responsibility now as science communicators to make other people believe in science, embrace science, and share science. Thank you very much, Sir Norley. And of course, kay Sir Rodolfo P. de Guzman, si Sir Rudy, who presented to us the topic, why write about science and technology? Why should we be writing about science and technology? Of course, because there are a lot of stories that we can share about science and technology. And on top of that, we would like to agree with what Sir Rudy had made mention that people just love stories. Di nga ho ba, umagang-umaga pa lang, pag nabukas na tayo ng ating mga telepono, sa Facebook pa lang, marami na tayong mga kwentong nakikita. Na putting science into it, we have to write stories on science, taking into consideration the elements of popularity, importance, human interest, timeliness, proximity, and meaning. Thank you very much, sir. Also, I would like to thank all the DOST scholars. We were invited by PSTC Cagayan to be with us today, even all the representatives from the various regional line agencies, the academe, and other stakeholders of DOST. One very clear takeaway from me, and hope this is also a takeaway for the rest, is that while attending this forum, is for us to ensure a quality science journalism product, we should not only know the science and art of writing, but because all this can be learned over and above, we should take time to nurture our interest in writing and develop our passion, not just in science, but more on how to properly communicate science, making it more attractive, easy to learn, appreciated, and shared to others, all in the name of development to our beloved Cagayan Valley. From a chat with PD Silvia, he made mention that we conceptualize this activity because we want to gather all you writers, the journalists, the information officers, and the researchers from the regional line agencies and also the academe to revisit your interest in science and further improve your craft in science journalism so that together we can share the gospel of science and inspire and be of help to many, especially amidst this pandemic. While observing the process of the Q&A a while back, I believe that about 80 to 90% of this objective was attained. So with that, I hope everybody learned something new from this activity to be applied for the benefit of all. As we commonly say at the OST, science for the people, if I may say, excellent science writing for the people. Thank you so much for your active participation in today's Science Journalism Forum. Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. God bless us all.
Thank you, Mom Tess. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Before we end, allow me to acknowledge our participants for today. From the state universities and colleges, we have ISU Kawayan Campus, CSU Sanchez Mira, CSU Gonzaga, Harig Campus, Lalo Campus, CSU Piat, and Lasam. We also have from Nueva Vizcaya State University. We also have participants from Quirino State University. From the Department of Education, we have the SDO Cagayan. We have SDO Tuguegarao City. We have also participants from Cagayan National High School, Magsingal Elementary School, Lalo Cagayan. We also have from Bawa National High School and Bagao National High School. We have from the School of Arts and Trades, Sanchez Mira. Maraming salamat po sa DepEd for joining us at this activity. From government agencies, we have the DA Regional Field Office 2, the RAFIS Division. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us. We also have DOST FIVOX and DTI Region 2. Salamat. Again, my name is Romeo Puyat, your host, signing off. We hope to replicate this activity. Thank you again.
Thank you, Sir Richard, Mama Angeli. Thank you. See you soon. Thank you, Sir Romy. Good work.